Well, we're back, and I've still got my hat on because as Santa Claus, we were giving away money with Richard Moore, who was here a few minutes ago, and we were talking about scientific research tax credits, the way I still remember them, and now SR and AEDs. But that's all right. We showed you how to get lots and lots and lots of money. So if you happen to be watching this and you didn't catch that part, then you can always go and watch it in archives. It won't be up until tomorrow, December the 10th sometime, but it'll be there, and you can take a look at Richard and how to get your scientific research money out of the government. And it works out to a lot of money. It can work out to 68%, 35%, 40%. It's a lot of money, and you've got to watch the whole thing. It's an hour long to really get it all. Now, Dan Walco was my expected guest. Dan has sent a new person in Seabank Capital. I actually had lunch with him last Wednesday, a week ago today, at Dan's office out in White Rock, the border of White Rock and South Surrey there. And we were talking about foreign exchange. Brian, you found us.
I found you.
Brian Elgood is from Seabank Capital, and you can get hold of Seabank Capital at area code 866-541-9952. I give out the long distance number because 19 out of 20 people that will be watching this in archives or whatever are someplace else.
Right.
So there's no sense bothering with the local number. Now, what you were coming for today was to talk about charitable giving. And you brought that up last Wednesday, and I said, well, there's not an awful lot of people that ever do that. And you sort of agreed with me on that a little bit. And we're sitting here, and we're just sort of talking about it, and over walks the previous guest, Richard, who wants to know all about it because he just did it. Now, you're sitting over there, Richard. The camera's not on you. Oh, you've got a camera on him now? So we snuck up on him, did he? You can actually, can you see it? Can you see the lights of Vancouver out behind him? You can. We're sitting up on top of Gross Road on Prospect Road in North Vancouver, and those are the downtown lights of Vancouver that you can see behind his head. It's just like David Letterman or Jay Leno or something with the... Now, you started this off because you're a director of the Hancock Wildlife Society. Was it the Hancock Wildlife Society you gave the shares to? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it wasn't.
Well, it wasn't. It was someplace else.
It was Nature Trust of BC.
Oh, Nature Trust. I know that one as well. I've done programs with them back in my daily program.
They buy land,
yes,
put it aside for posterity, so it'll never get developed.
Yep.
And with the money that that they've received from the shares that I gave to them, they've bought some ecologically sensitive land just south of Hope.
Well, that's well, where you're just south of Hope. You're talking about the valley.
On the Fraser River.
On the Fraser River.
On the Fraser River, just a half a mile along the river on the way to Vancouver from Hope.
Well, that's good stuff, and that's what people have to. There's these trusts, nature trusts, exist right across the country, and I've got a book on it by, I'm trying to remember his name, the old president of the World Wildlife Fund. Last name starts with an H. Can't remember, but it's a good book on how to do this, and you don't have to give them your land right now. You can actually give the trust land that you're living on, and they give you a life estate to stay on the land so that they inherit it at that point too.
That's right, David.
Good point to do. And something, Brian, you didn't know we were going to be talking about all this stuff as well. And I had no idea we were sitting here with somebody that had actually done it. So you bought some shares. Shares went up in value over the cost price of what you had, and you donated the shares.
That's it.
And so that the audience understands what happens when you do that. And what Brian wanted to talk about was the fact that the increased capital gain, all the capital gain, then you give it to the Wildlife Fund, the trust, the charity, the Salvation Army. I've done lots of programs with Sid Williams, who's the guy in charge of this for the Salvation Army in BC. When you give it to them, they get to sell. Let's say you bought a share for $1 and it's worth $100 now. Let's say you bought 100 of them, so you got 100 times $100, $10,000. And you spent $100, and now you got this $10,000. If you sell the shares, you're going to have to pay tax on 50% of the value. Old tax on $5,000, which is going to cost you $1,250 to $2,000, depending on your tax bracket. But if you give them the shares and they sell them, you don't have to pay any capital gains tax. Now, you were at Van City before you joined David, or Dan Walco.
Yep.
You were at Van City and doing this charitable gifting with Van City somehow. Is that what I understand?
Well, we had a corporate...
Oh, no, the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. What was it? I remember.
Yeah, I was a director of finance at the VSO.
Vancouver Symphony Orchestra.
Yep. And just prior to that, I was at Van City.
No, it was the VSO that you were doing the charitable
That's
giving
where we
part.
had... That's where we were receiving shares on the receiving end and issuing contribution receipts.
So a person like Richard would
Yep.
give you his $10,000 worth of shares. You would give Richard a receipt for $10,000.
Yep.
Now, I am embarrassed. I don't remember the name of the form. I've done it several times. I should have gone and looked it up before you got here. There is a specific form that you have to put with your tax return. And you haven't yet filed your tax return on this yet, have you, Richard?
No.
Well, we'll get you the name of the form, and you put the form in. It's like a Schedule 3, where you show the form and what you paid for them, what you sold them for, or what you gave them away for. So you take the income, you take it into income, but then you exempt it, if I remember right, in line 256. So you still have to account to the CRA for your profits on the shares, but it gets exempted because you gave them to the charity. And that's something that people have a hard time figuring out too. And I will tell you that the first time I did it, you were talking about profile and Cantax and so on. I never did find the form on Cantax. I'm sure it's there someplace. And it took me, I'm sure, an hour to finally figure out how to bring it up on profile at the time, because I didn't know what the name of the form was. I phoned profile. They didn't know what the name of the form was. And phoned them in Calgary, etc. And finally figured out the name of the form, found it in the program. It's there, and you can use it. And if you've got profile on your computer, you can do it yourself. Richard Moore. Good stuff. Anyway, back to you, Brian. How did you want to talk about this? Because what is it that you wanted to do?
Well, I was thinking about this when we were having lunch last week, and Seabank Capital manages the assets of foundations and
a lot of people.
charities. But this dawned on me that if any of our clients are interested in contributing shares to a charity, we can facilitate that with our broker, because ultimately you've got to put the shares into a broker's account so that the charity can sell.
That's correct.
The shares and make it happen. So that's what came up last week.
Okay. Because what we're trying to do is get across to you that if you've got a favorite charity and you want to give them, whether it's $5,000, $10,000, or $20,000 or $100, I guess breaking one share out of your account somehow and sending it over to the VSO or Wildlife or the Nature Trust or something doesn't make an awful lot of sense and is more trouble than it's worth. But if you're giving something significant, if you've got your you got your mutual fund you bought 20 years ago and it's actually gone up in value and you got some money in it, you can send 100 shares, 300 shares of your mutual fund over to the broker, over to the charity, and the charity can sell them themselves, and you've got no capital gain.
Yep.
And it's important stuff to try and figure that out.
Exactly.
All right.